Hello everyone, welcome to this section called Needed Conversations. For this video, I had the chance to speak with John Bishop and it was a great time. We spoke about becoming teachable. So if this is something you've been trying to learn about, it's gonna be really good for you. Please let me know what you think in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe if you wanna see more content like this. Let's go for it. Before we start, I just wanted to ask for you to give us a little background on yourself. Tell us what should people know about John Bishop?
Well, I was born and raised in upstate New York, and I moved to Charlotte, North Carolina in 97. 1997, that's 1997, Abiud.
Okay, yeah, I don't think I was born back then.
I don't think you were either. I just want to make sure you knew that it was 1997,
Okay,
not like 1987 or anything like that.
got it.
Yeah, and then been living down there ever since. So right now I'm actually on vacation in Tennessee.
Wow.
It's my wife's birthday tomorrow,
So y'all are partying hard.
yeah, relaxing hard.
I guess that would be a better term. So now going into the real deal. As you know, I told you already, I did a poll on my social media and I was asking people some things they would like to hear about. And one of them that I thought was very interesting, and I was like, I know the perfect guy for this one, was how to be intentional about learning and
Yeah.
more towards like becoming teachable. How do you become teachable, and like I guess one question to start up would be how to be intentional about learning. What would be like something you would say about it?
I think the best advice is you got to know yourself, and I think some people are more geared or wired toward wanting to learn than others. And so for me, learning is a natural byproduct. I'm just curious by nature, and so if we're in conversation at the dinner table and Sherlock Holmes brings something up that's interesting, I'm gonna probably pull my phone out and Google it in the spot because I kind of want to know. Like I'm interested and
Yeah,
curious by nature. So learning comes a little bit more naturally for me. Maybe for others it won't. Um, but I still think that if you develop curiosity as just kind of a characteristic of yourself and allow yourself to wonder, then learning becomes the byproduct. If you
yeah,
think of learning as a discipline that you have to build into your life, that's going to be a little bit harder to sustain, I think. So I think generally speaking, if you can build more of the identity feature um, in any kind of thing that you're trying to grow in your life, you're going to be better off at actually building something that lasts than if you work on building the discipline first. Because I think discipline flows from identity. What I mean by that
yeah,
is curiosity is an identity factor. I'm a curious person. Um, Learning is the byproduct of curiosity. So learning is a discipline. Does that make sense what I'm saying, Abiud? Are you
I
connecting with
do.
that at all?
It does. So you would say, I guess the way I kind of understood it is easier for us to learn whenever you have certain passion for it. When you're really curious about something, it'll be easier for you to like really understand and you know kind of absorb the knowledge.
Exactly. And then I think the practical wisdom for any individual then is, what am I actually curious about? If you ask yourself that question, you might be curious about skateboarding or my son backflips,
Yeah,
or learning a different language, or you might be curious about the latest drama in some celebrity's life.
yeah, yeah,
And
yeah,
so I think we narrow our scope down to mathematics as learning, and reading People magazine isn't. But at some level, if you're curious about something and you're willing to dive in and understand more, then that's learning. And so developing that muscle first, and then moving into the things that it's like, well, yeah, I'm very interested in that and I want to learn it, or moves into, this is something that I think is good for me to learn, even if
yeah.
I'm not necessarily curious yet.
Yeah, I think that's a huge deal because now, I mean, right now I'm in college still in my last year, but the thing is sometimes, you don't like certain, like things that you don't want to learn, but the school like asks you to take or makes you take. And then you realize like it's necessary. You know, there's some things you have to, even though you don't like them, and you just
Right.
gotta find a way to apply them to yourself, you know, to your life.
Right.
So okay, so let's say I'm gonna give you an example. Let's say, for example, myself, at some point I do know I want to be a pastor, and I mean, I'm already in school, I'm taking some Bible classes and stuff like that, but out of just like what happens in school, what would you say would be practical ways to prepare for that, even though you don't know how it would look in the future, you know?
Yeah, I think one thing, so if you're talking about ministry in particular, ministry doesn't come from a book. I don't care how much wisdom you can find in books.
It's good.
Ministry happens with people in real life. So don't ever get too far away from the practice of what you're building towards. You can put it in a different context. If somebody listening to this isn't into ministry, maybe they're into fitness or something, and they're a basketball player. You can go to the weight room to train to play basketball, but you're never really going to learn how to play basketball until you're playing basketball itself. And so
Yeah.
a library might be a good place to learn theology, but or the principles of theology, but you're going to have to sit down across from somebody who's struggling in
Yeah.
an area where God has spoken to really understand who God is and what he means in that situation. So I guess the first thing I would say is, if you're really trying to build in practical tips on how to learn, try to figure out where the knowledge you're trying to gain actually shows up in your real life, and then spend time doing that. You know,
Yeah.
there was a season in my life, this is kind of a heavier example maybe, but I was committed to rooting out shame in my life. And I was like, you know, where does shame pop up in my life? And so I took a survey of the things that I was doing and experiencing in my life, and I realized there were certain things that I would do that would leave me feeling uncomfortable. Like for instance, the awkwardness of the waiter walking up to the table over and over and over again when you're trying to have a serious conversation at the restaurant. That would leave me feeling anxious and embarrassed. And I don't know why. Maybe it doesn't bother anybody else,
Nah,
but for
it
me,
does. It
it
does bother people. It bothers
yeah,
me.
it bothered me. And I was like, how do I deal with this? And so I made this commitment to actually increase the awkwardness in restaurants for a season. And I'm weird. You don't have to do anything like this if you don't want to, but I would just make the waiter or waitress pick my meal for me. And so it automatically created a connection with that person. And so we were kind of in it together, you know, where the mystery of what my meal was going to be became like a kind of a topic of conversation for the full 15 minutes. And when they came and interrupted, it was usually to say something like, hey, do you have any allergies? And then they'd walk away and we'd all laugh. And it was just a fun way to kind of like break through the ice. And,
Yeah.
you know, it's a small, simple example, but if we're talking about learning, you got to find where the thing you're trying to work through or overcome or build into your life hits reality, and then find ways to put it there, you know, find ways to practice it. Another thing that I would say is we tend to be motivated by a lot of different things. One of them is incentive. So, you know, there was a
Yeah.
season where I was really trying to get back into shape, and my sister-in-law, Erica, and I decided that we were going to buy ourselves new shoes in January if we committed to work out in this fitness class through the last 2 weeks of November and all of December. And so we just kind of put it out there, and it was like, you know, that's not necessarily learning in a strict sense, but we committed to build a discipline into our life with an incentive, and it worked. You know, I got back into shape in that season. Another one, so incentive is one. Another one is tension. And
Yeah.
so if you sit back and look at your life and find an area where there's a friction or a tension that you don't want, you might find a pocket of motivation that will help you go and
Yeah.
learn in a category. And I think a lot of us at the end of a calendar year will sit down and we'll try to figure out, like, what do I want to accomplish next year? And that may work, you know, especially if you're a forward thinking kind of person. That may be a helpful way to do it. So don't stop doing it if it works for you, but maybe consider adding what didn't work last year.
Yeah.
Because if you can find the things that didn't work that were frustrating, there may be an intrinsic motivation for you to do it differently in the coming years. Because it's like, I don't want to recreate the things that I was frustrated about.
Yeah.
So I don't know, just a couple things.
Yeah. And you just said, you mentioned tension, and I mean, I love working out, and one of the concepts that I've learned from my, working out life would be like the concept of time under tension. And the thing is that a lot of people work out doing like super quick, like reps and like, let's do 100 reps, let's do 50 reps. They never really take the time to put the tension on the muscles. They never see it grow. So I feel like it's very important to have that in mind where like, if you really want to grow, I mean, tension is not a bad thing, like it might hurt in the moment. It might be hard, but once you get through it and then you grow, like you'll see, the difference. You'll get stronger, you'll get better, and I feel like
Yeah.
that's something that you really touched. Like it was right on point. It was awesome.
Well, and just like in fitness, having somebody, or accountability, having somebody with you who's going
Yeah.
through the process, I think that would be another practical thing. And so I've been learning Spanish for 801 days consecutively on
Wow.
my Duolingo app. Thank you. Thank you. Muchísimas gracias. And
Hey.
what's funny is it took me about 100 days before I just kind of had built enough discipline to where it's automatic for me.
Yeah.
And during that first 100 days, I had a friend named Justin Rosales who was learning it alongside me. And I was more incentivized to not lose my streak and fall behind than I was to actually learn the language.
Yeah.
But, I was learning the language. So if you're talking about how do I become a learner, having somebody to do it with, find something that you're interested in, that you have a friend who's interested in as well.
Right.
And that might be a good thing to dive in to try to discover or
Yeah.
learn or build into your life.
That's true. And I feel like you have to find that spot, how you said, in your life where you can use it as a motivation. Like let's say you have like you're married already and you just want to learn how to provide for your family. So you use that as a motivation to learn about finances or stuff like that. And so like I feel like it's if you focus on the right things, it's easier to find the motivation to actually grow and learn. So that
Yeah.
was that was awesome, honestly.
Well, and you just reminded me of one other one that's actually, this is like a shortcut. Um, one of the best ways to learn something that you don't have built into your life yet is to just go find somebody who already does it well and see if you can
Yeah.
get on their calendar. And if you can just get around other people who've already mastered what you want to learn, sometimes exposure and just rubbing shoulders with people who've already arrived in that area, um, you'll discover uh, kind of like a fast track towards downloading all the things that you want to know. Because somebody who's been doing something for years and years, they've forgotten all the little tricks and techniques that
Yeah.
made it easier for them. They just do it second nature. They're not even thinking about it. But
Yeah.
if you're a learner in that environment, sitting down and trying to absorb what they're doing, you'll have great questions will just pop into your mind in real
Yeah.
time, because you're like, hey, why do you do it like that? Why do you hold your pencil that way?
Yeah.
What's the point of that little thing that you got over there? And there's a lot of opportunity to learn in those types of situations as well.
It is, and I feel like it's very important to have in mind the importance of like hustling. Like don't losing those opportunities that life brings to you, because I feel like it's so easy to be like, oh, I'll do it next time. If I see him, or if I see her, or something like that, you're like, I'll try it next time. But I feel like just making the decision of doing it in the moment, it really opens like opportunities, like big opportunities of just being alert and looking around. I know an opportunity might open that you were never expecting, but it all started because you started a conversation or something like that.
Exactly. I think that's exactly right. And I stumbled across a phrase. I want to say it's Italian because it was Michelangelo that I heard said it. But he was 87, I think, at the
Yeah.
end of his life, and he's already painted the Sistine Chapel ceiling, and he's already carved the iconic statue of David. He's done all these things already in his life. And somebody said, at 87, what goals do you have, for this year?
Yeah.
And he said, my goal this year is the same as my goal every year. Still I am learning. He said, ancora imparo, which is still I am learning in Italian. And the idea is, why I bring that up right now is, if you think of learning as something that gets you to some kind of end,
Yeah.
then you're probably going to get discouraged, because mastering a language, for example, it never happens.
Yeah.
People who were born and live natively in a country that speaks a particular language don't master the language.
Yeah. I
I've
don't.
I was born and raised in the United States. I still don't know every word there is to know in English. And
Yeah,
if I go into a doctor's office, I'm going to be confused. They're
yeah,
speaking English, but I don't know that part of the language. So you never master anything. And if you can keep learning, not as a destination, but as like the journey or the road,
yeah,
learning is what we do day in and day out. And it's how we keep our minds fresh. It's how we continue to embrace new opportunities and challenge ourselves and build new relationships. And learning isn't something that we ever stop, or at
yeah.
least not if we're doing it right, according to my opinion.
No, no, you're right. I agree with everything you just said, and it's very important for people, let's say my age, to know those things. Like if we are able to master those things while we're still young, it'll be easier for us to put it in practice. What like whenever we're older, when we grow. Well, I think that would be it. Like, thank you so much for having this conversation with me, and
Yeah, sure.
there was a lot of good content throughout our conversation, so I really hope people like it, and it just helps as much as possible to everyone who's seeking how to learn, who's trying to learn.
Exactly.
So
Well, you're a good man, Abiud. Thanks for the opportunity.
thank you for being part of it. All right,
Yep.
we'll stay in touch. God bless you. Hey everyone, I hope you like this video. Please like it, share it, and then if you want to see more content like this, don't forget to subscribe. We'll see each other next time.